So as Dennis said, I'm going to explain what I call EcCoWeLL, because I'm from Cork, I call it EcCoWeLL. The concept of this idea that Peter Kearns very kindly presented to us in March. Peter Kearns developed this concept, and he came to visit us in March. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. So what I'm going to talk about really is how we're trying to put it into practice and what we're trying to do and why we're doing it. When Peter spoke initially, or when he presented on EcCoWeLL as a concept, it's really to do with the fact that we're living in an unprecedented world of, a runaway world of unprecedented challenges. We've got large-scale migration, we've got escalating urbanisation with the majority of people in the world now living in cities. And there's growing diversity across all of these populations with demographic change, global warming, poverty and growing inequality, and I suppose from my perspective, growing health inequalities. And because of this, there's a sense of turbulence and there's a challenge ahead, there's a challenge set to us in our cities for how we're going to respond. EcCoWeLL offers some ideas and opportunities for that, and it really, the concept from our perspective in Cork especially, and how we've taken it on, is that it's building a web of connections across the city. And as the Lord Mayor said, Cork is a good sized city for networks. There's a lot of familiar faces here in this room. To me, there's new faces as well, but it's a good city to start a concept like this and to take root with it. The whole word, EcCoWeLL, where it comes from, is ecology, culture, community, well-being and lifelong learning. And each of these concepts Peter explains and develops, and in your packs there's both a leaflet explaining it and there's also a paper from Peter on it. Again, when we were talking about EcCoWeLL initially, and I was thinking about this in the last few days, in terms of silos, we generally work in silos. For those of you that might be TED Talk fans, Sir Ken Robinson always talks about how we're educated as individuals. We're brought up as individuals and we're examined as individuals. But we actually perform much better in groups. And I certainly see that in terms of my role in Healthy Cities, and I know Joan Devlin, who's here today, will be talking as well about the Healthy City concept. But in health, the health services is a small fraction of what impacts on our health. Where we live, how we live, whether we're employed and whether we're educated, has a much bigger impact. So it makes sense, if we're going to work and we're going to challenge inequality and we're going to look at the challenges that are out there, that we get together. And in this climate of recession and low access to resources, it just makes sense. Silos have been shown to have limited capacity, and working together is much more beneficial. For me, explaining EcCoWeLL, it's a theory. Our logo was designed by Martin O'Donoghue, who did some great work in thinking about what it's all about. And if you look at our logo, we have the 4 different silos as such intermingling, and they're connecting. And it's that space in the middle where we're thinking broader, we're thinking outside of our silos, and we're being creative, that you actually produce the best possible ideas. It's that collision of ideas, even if there's conflict, and boy can there be conflict between different sectors, that can actually lead to change and to positive outcomes. And that's what the idea of our logo is about. It's all of the sectors coming together, giving yourself the permission to take time out and to think beyond your silo. And very much today, that's what we're inviting you to do. We're delighted to see so many people here, and we are inviting you to take your hat off from your particular silo and think broader. Give yourself the permission here today and the space to think in a more holistic way, and let's see what kind of ideas come out of it. The other key thing I think about EcCoWeLL is that, and we've discussed this in our group, how is this different? There's lots of interagency structures in many cities and towns across Ireland, but how is EcCoWeLL different? And what we feel very strongly is that there's no key leader, there's no one leader, there's no one driver. It's such a collaboration. It's a joint partnership and it's working together, and it actually works very well because of that. The other thing I personally take from EcCoWeLL is the interagency and the joining together is at all levels. So, whether you're a play school teacher, whether you're a primary school teacher, whether you're a secondary school teacher, a professor, or the Minister for Education, you can apply the EcCoWeLL concept to your daily life. So it's for everybody. And sometimes people and citizens feel disengaged from an interagency structure. They don't feel part of it. What we feel is that EcCoWeLL offers that opportunity for all people working on the ground in particular to adapt it. Just to say as well, I suppose it's difficult to get people together. It's difficult to get partnership and to get people around the table. And it actually took me a long time to get a picture of the Irish Cabinet together from Google. So we do work individually. It's challenging, and getting people together can be a challenge. What we've done here in Cork and where we've come from since April 2012, when George Osborne from Pascal came from Melbourne, he presented initially the idea to us during the Lifelong Learning Festival in 2012. And we were really intrigued, firstly by the name and secondly by the concept. And for me, from a Healthy Cities perspective, it excited me because it was an interagency structure, it was a collaboration, and it was getting together. It was bringing healthy cities with green cities, with learning cities, and with economically viable cities. It was music to my ears, and I was delighted to jump on board. So we established a working group in September 2012, so this time last year, and we organised a seminar in Triskel during the Lifelong Learning Festival as a context, and Peter Kearns presented the concept to us, which was wonderful to have him here from Australia. We've also established a social media presence, and we've lots of followers and contributors, and that's really helping in terms of interaction. And then during April, May, July and September of this year, we've had various think tank sessions with the different silos individually to see what they thought about it. And I have to say, for all of the think tanks that I attended, there was huge interest and huge commitment to it. We've also had an ideas exchange, which is a format for, if you think back to the logo, allowing that creativity to happen. So you're inviting people to bring their ideas and to discuss them and to figure out how to bring them forward. And we're delighted you'll have that opportunity this afternoon as well to do the same thing. We've also looked at developing a Cork Food Policy Council, because we feel that's very much an EcCoWeLL ideal. It's not just about health, it's not just about the environment, it's also about the economics of food, and it's also about the educational capacity the food offers. And we're delighted that that's happening now as well. And here we are today, September, our international conference, delighted to see so many delegates, 260 people registered. We're thrilled that you're taking the time out and that you're going to contribute and develop the concept with us today. And we're going to run another ideas exchange before the end of the year to try and get more ideas and creativity going as well. When Peter was with us in March, he left us with 10 tips on how to be an EcCoWeLL city or an EcCoWeLL project or an EcCoWeLL individual. To have a shared vision is key. And we talk about shared vision, but do we really invest at the start when we get together with different agencies in a shared vision? That's very important. Addressing deprivation and inequity. Again, from a Healthy Cities perspective, that's music to my ears. You're looking at inequality and you're looking at deprivation and you're prioritising it. You can divide the city into urban villages because different communities have different needs. We're not a homogenous city. There's different needs across the city. Develop an involved and active society, and we have never needed that more. And this offers us the opportunity to get our citizens really involved. But be strategic as well. He suggests that we use environmental projects to bring communities together, and to remember that heritage is important, so make it live. to think globally, but to act locally, and that's an old community work description or mantra for many years, but it makes sense. To build learning into every stage of development. And how often do we do that? How often do we stop and reflect on what we've learned through a different process and how we can do it better next time? And enlarge our idea of what a city is to include well-being and happiness. And again, we have a well-being and community group here today, and we'll be talking about the new happiness index that's being developed for Ireland. That's very important. Again, just the benefits. Peter left us with this idea in March as well, that you get a cross-fertilisation of ideas. You learn from each other. We have to be open to listening to each other and learning new ways of doing things. Reframing your perspective on a whole new way of doing things, because the old way isn't necessarily working. The traditional response isn't working. It's time for something new. The Medici effect, which I think is really interesting, because I have a quote here: great ideas happen at the intersection where different or diverse industries, cultures and disciplines collide. And ultimately, it ignites an explosion of ideas that can lead to extraordinary innovations. And that's very much what we're striving to do with EcCoWeLL in Cork City. So thank you very much for coming along, and we're looking forward to your participation in the day.